What's going on, guys? Still in there. Today we will be going over a ticker symbol analysis on the ticker symbol PLTR. Palantir. Palantir has made some massive moves within the markets the last few days and weeks. It's really been the stock with people that have a very close eye on. The new investors, the long-term investors, the experienced investors, right? Everyone has been keeping an eye on Palantir as it's just had an incredible run-up and very exciting news and a lot of hype behind the stock. With that being said, we'll be using technical analysis to give a complete non-biased, non-emotional perspective on where the stock price may go in the next few days and or weeks. With all that being to the side, let's get straight to the video, guys. So on the daily analysis, we definitely are showing a lot of good signs, right? We're pushing these all-time highs, breaking out of this very beautiful pattern, which has a pretty impressive price target, guys, which we will get into. But with that being said, let's jump over the weekly. Let's get to a macro perspective, get a really zoomed out point of view, and then we'll get closer and closer and closer until eventually we're at ground level, where we can get a complete analysis of where the stock price may or may not go. On the weekly analysis, we do see 1, 2, and 3 very nice weeks on the weekly time frame, pressed up against these all-time highs. That's the first thing that's very, very abundant, as when a stock has this very violent run-up, pushing through these highs over here, running up, then having a very, very nasty reversal. When stock does get back to these levels, especially being a volatile stock like Palantir, guys, how stock reacts pressed up in those zones says a lot where the stock potentially can go and what the psychology is of the buyers and sellers. So we did run into this, this zone very, very aggressive before getting sellers to come in. Hey, party's over, guys. We're stuffing this, right? But buyers had something else to say, right? They pushed it back up. If we retract all this, we get rid of this candle, and you see this big red bar pushing down at these highs, right? A lot of short sellers will look to get in on these areas, especially say, oh, it's overextended, right? Look what happened here. But immediately, it was reversed, right? You see that wick pressed all the way back up, followed by another weekly candle, which was a hammer-esque candle with a big wide bar in the middle, shoving right back up in that zone. So this definitely is a lot. Right here, we'll mark this up, guys. Right here, this is where you're going to expect a lot of short sellers to get stuck, where that short squeeze potential, right? And where's the stop loss on these sellers that get in this position at this key time, hoping for a double top like pattern, some esque of that? It's right here, guys. Have to close over that on the weekly time frame. Looks very, very nice, guys, as far as a weekly perspective. We can make an argument that we are extended from this point, but I think the wicks from the bottom have really shown the presence from the pullbacks, and it hasn't quite been linear as it's had these dips, which has made this more of a sustained movement, which I think we can pretty much continue to move forward. So as far as a weekly perspective, guys, love what I'm seeing on the chart. This isn't concrete just as of yet, as we are, recently over these highs, but there's a lot of good signs to be seen as far as the weekly perspective. And of course, I don't think I need to say it, but it is part of our analysis. We are clearly in a uptrend, guys. Long-term uptrend. We're seeing good signs, strength in these all-time high areas. Got to be bullish on the weekly analysis, but there's not a whole lot we can get. So with that being said, let's go jump over to the daily so we can get a little bit more of a close range analysis. On the daily time frame, we are working with a very, very textbook cup and handle, which you will hear me mention on the channel going into the next few weeks, because this is very important, guys. This cup and handle has been forming all the way back from February. And from this point, forming a quite literal bowl-like structure, cup, whatever you want to call it. Right, cup would be a little more formal because that's the name of the pattern, right? Well, you get this cup-like pattern, stock price really getting beat down. It's starting to curl up where buyers are really starting to show some presence. At this point, the sellers have been evacuated, and we get a 180, right? We get this 180 pressing up all the way back to where we started, right? So we're at this neutral zone. From there, we kind of, get out and kind of just go sideways a little bit. We form that handle-like structure, which forms the next trend, typically for the next few months. Considering this is a long-term trend pattern, right, guys? As we see a very, very big cup and handle on the daily time frame. And it's not the biggest one we've seen in the world, but just how clean it is, guys. Just the psychology we've seen, right? Really, ever since we closed over these levels, this resistance marker right here with some strength, I was keeping a close eye on it. I thought it was a very good possibility we end up forming this cup and handle. That's exactly what we've got. So from a long-term buyer perspective, this is exactly what you want to see. A stock is really just setting up nice for the next few months, not just a short-term blip in the road kind of spark up. All right, so now that's the side, guys. We actually need to do one more thing. So we're going to get a price target for this cup and handle. So a procedural thing is you get the bottom of the cup handle all the way to the top. And guys will say this is going to be your price target, right? 70% up. What we like to do on the channel, I've been doing the last couple of years, which I notice is a better accuracy, is we take half of that movement, a 50% retracement. We'll take this, we'll drag it all the way to the top of the neckline, and that lines up perfectly with that psychological $150 resistance level. I think this is extremely attainable. It is being really quite conservative. I think it's a good possibility. We do push up higher. It's just very nice, guys. Even if we take away this whole cup and handle, just seeing the psychology of this stock, there's a whole lot of strength. We push up into this major resistance level for gapping down, right? Very, very ugly, quote unquote, in theory, before we curl up, right? And over here, we run into this major level. Boom, rejected. Boom. We're really stagnating before ripping back up. So there hasn't really been any big seller presence. We have these short-term dips, these little blips, but there's no real substance behind any selling presence, right? This should have been it, guys. And it looked like it could have been. With this very big wide bar with some tiny wicks on the bottom, really just yanking down. And since we've formed these lows, guys, people have just reestablished positions and they've got back into the stock. So I got to call what I see, guys. We're seeing a lot of bullish signs, and intuition is not something you should always use as a trader. It can be something that can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Contained and used, but just looking at this, guys, as far as a dude who's been analyzing stocks for years and years and thousands of hours of screen time, this looks like a layup, guys. This looks very easy run up for Palantir. It looks like we're just super, super strong. We're breaking it down to more finite detail. We're seeing these signs. So with that being said, I do say all this knowing that in the after hours, Palantir is down about 3.5%, which is a sizable measurement, right? It's not the best thing, but this kind of does come back to QQQ, the overall market. So we'll go over this for 30 seconds because this has something to do with Palantir, right? We're very overextended. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green bars on the daily time frame. We potentially could see that green to red, so much green printing up, gapping up in these overextended levels, green to red. But guys, it's really hard to tell. QQQ is one of those stocks that is just can be so extended for so long that people try to get in and short these tops. They short these tops and they really want to jump in. And that's when they get flushed out. That's when short squeezes happen. So it's really, really hard to predict these overextended periods in the market. But I do want to, mention this, guys. This QQQ is very extended with this huge gap up, which could potentially get filled at that $492 level. But there's not enough data, guys. We will go over that when it happens. But jumping back to Palantir, it is something we got to mention. That's really something that every stock will be going over. I'll be going over next few days. It's something we're watching, right? It's the overall market. It's a very harsh correction, guys, as a lot of things did have in the after hours, like PTQ. That can affect stocks in the short-term perspective, but just from a straight perspective, looking at Palantir, it is a very strong stock with a lot of volume, and it could potentially just, not even react to QQQ's movement, because it is the popular stock right now, and that wouldn't shock me at all. But keep that in mind, guys. QQQ is something we will be monitoring in the Palantir analysis. Alrighty, guys. A lot to unpack, but I think that's all we're going to get from the daily. So we're going to go jump over to the hourly analysis. We can get a little bit more of a short-term, close perspective on the hourly time frame. We mentioned how this level is very, very key, right? Tracking back to the weekly analysis, we're at these all-time high areas. This very, very important resistance level, which is now support. We mentioned that in the last video at this point. I said, guys, even if we come down to this level and bounce, we're still in the trend of setting these higher lows. We're stair stepping. We're coming up, we're coming down. We're coming up, we're coming down. We're coming up, we're coming down. That's what we're going to want to see out of Palantir, especially moving into these all-time highs with a lot of structure, these nice move up, and I'm just very tight and thin action, forming this flag, which we will get into in just a second. It's what we want to see. We want to see stock be tame right now. We don't want to see it. Of course, a big move up like this is great. Like, that's a good sign. But as far as after this pullback, after this run up, moving into these all-time high zones, seeing stock be very, very patient and calm is a good sign. It almost comes back to Tesla for just a 10-second, comparison from a live price action analysis. We've seen a really nice move up from a ton of bullish moves, a layup, a very easily predictable move up. And now we're seeing stock just kind of hang out and get really, really tight. And you can't hate that, guys. When you see stock do this, you can only lean bullish as we're hanging up. We're bouncing right on a very, very major level, which previously flushed it all the way from 125 to as low as $75. So on the hourly perspective, we are seeing a bull flag being formed. It does not take a rocket scientist to tell you that. All right, we do see this descending channel going down. This makes it a little bit tricky as we are bleeding in the after hours. So if stock does open up, say at $127, because it bled a little bit in the after hours, well, now we're working with something a little bit different. But from the current hourly candles, it's very nice, guys. We're super tight in this downward channel. We don't have anything bad to say about it. So from an hourly perspective, guys, the money spot, what we want to keep an eye on is that one we have marked up, which we put in the last video, 130.65. You see, since we made that video, guys, we had about 15 hours of pressing up right against that moment, right to the cent and rejecting it. We pull that back up. See it really just react quite nice. We'll get rid of these trend lines real quick. But it's really been reactive to that level extremely. So keep an eye on that, guys. Once we break over that 130.65, we'll be effectively leaving this hourly trend, this tight channel, this range forming from these all-time high lows, which is now support, and the top of this range. So a lot of stocks ranging out right now, very similar to Tesla in a lot of ways. But guys, we'll be keeping an eye on that. I do predict when we do break that level strong, clean, we really get over that 130.65 of strength. At that point, we will move to 135 and continue to march higher for a very predictable price action movement. Of course, there can be fake breakouts and things like these, guys, but the implied probability is very, very high considering everything we have. Now, if that's out of the way, guys, we do have an hourly cup and handle, which is playing out as well with this downer-like effect, forming that cup coming up and ripping out. So we're seeing a double confirmation as far as that comes. And right now, the question is really, how long will we stay in this flag? There's a good potential. Maybe this does last a couple more days and we bounce around. And that wouldn't be a bad sign at all, guys. The thing we really want to keep an eye on is to see this support level being pulled, which was previously a very, very crucial level, as we keep mentioning. That 124.25, if we see that level getting breached, a breach clean, or stock really flushed below, at that point, we will be looking at $120, 120.20, that general zone for that next support. But that's not what you want to see, guys. Despite having all these very, very bullish signs in Palantir stock, we do have to admit, come to a very simple conclusion that we're still working within a range, right? These lows are these all-time highs at the spot and the top of this new form range. Brings us right back to Tesla, guys, right? When we're down at these lows, we have this very, very predictable range we're working with at a very key spot. And once we got over that, the energy from this range sporadically led to this monster run-up. I see a very, very similar equation as far as Palantir stock goes. as it's ranging out at a very nice level, showing discipline. But with that being said, guys, keep an eye on that 125, 63, and that 124, 26. This general zone, right? I don't want to put an exact level to it, as this general area is where price rejected. But we'll be keeping a very, very close eye on that, guys. That will be a very, very key marker. But with that being said, we'll go over the final analysis, man. We're seeing these candles on the daily bouncing. Once again, a very simple way to put it, we're in this daily range, working between these 2 points. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. I wish I could give you guys a little bit more, but we got to keep it basic and stick to the fundamentals, because that's what works. So if you guys enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, all that. We'll be covering Palantir a couple times a week. It depends how many times you guys want to see these videos. I'm excited to cover Palantir, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video.